Hello and welcome to episode 159 of the Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam,
And I'm Sahil.
and we took a week off, and coming back, we've got about 10,000 trades to discuss here. I don't know how this happened. I feel like I missed almost all of them. I don't remember there being trades, but I guess there's some trades, and we got to talk about them.
Yeah, there's quite a bit that went down. It seemed like there's been, I think, almost a trade a day in June. Let's see, there's been okay, close 10 trades in 11 days, and we have a couple May trades that we have not talked about. Um, let's dive right in here. There are 13 we have not talked about. And the first one of those is yours. You traded Nelson Rada to Yuki for Joffman.
Yeah, so this is one. How about this? Why don't we just bunch all of the reliever trades in as one because they're not the most interesting and we can brush through them quicker. Nelson Rada for Jeff Hoffman. Nelson Rada was one of my lower tier prospects. And Jeff Hoffman is a top 4 to 5 holds guy in the league currently. And I thought it was an easy trade for me to make. Hoffman's been pretty good on my team so
Yeah,
far since trading for him.
I don't really understand why Yuki made the trade. I'll be honest.
Yeah, Rod is decently high on Fangraphs' list.
Yeah,
He's super young. He's um been very young for his league, although he has struggled pretty immensely this season. Um, so maybe Yuki just wants to bet on that. But I am very happy to take Jeff Hoffman.
yeah, Yuki also lives and dies by Fangraphs ranking, so I'm not particularly surprised.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, easy one to go over there. The next reliever centric trade. Uh,
Jason.
Jason Foley was traded for Andrew Kittredge. Do you have any thoughts? EBO sent Foley to the White Sox, trading away a Tiger, and they got Andrew Kittredge back. Any
The
thoughts?
the only thing I'll comment here is I think it's pretty funny how Zane like in the like on Sundays will be like shit like I need to go and clear a roster room so like make an ad and it's not like oh I'm just gonna ad drop someone. It's felt like the last couple of weeks he's just like fuck it I'm gonna go and trade someone. And this was him being like I need a holds guy. Let me trade Jason Foley to get a holds guy and like Kittredge has been one of the best holds guys this year. Just currently in terms of number of holds. I look at this Cardinals team's not good, but they're racking up holds. So like whatever. I think this trade literally means nothing in the big scheme.
Yeah, I agree. Foley is a bottom tier closer, but he is for now getting saves.
Exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Um, and yeah,
Kirby.
the reliever trade here was on the 10th. Kirby Yates for Yennier Cano. Yennier Cano, maybe made a little more sense to trade for Andrew before Danny Coulomb got hurt today. Um, but he gets Kirby Yates, and Kirby Yates is getting saves, so that is nice for him.
Yeah. My logic for making the trade was I have Hader and or I had Hader and Yates as closers. I wasn't really putting up elite saves numbers. I didn't really love the price for closers in this league. I picked up a couple holds guys and actually had like one of my best holds leagues ever tie my record. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna punt saves. I'm gonna go for holds. Yates is pitching a bit better than Cano, but like Cano's actually racking up a bunch of holds, whereas the Rangers can't seem to get save situation for Kirby Yates ever. So um, yeah, I'm fine with this. Plus, I had a lot of fun last year with Cano and being like, "Ooh, we're getting towards the end of an Orioles game, and it's close. I'm gonna get a hold." And indeed, he got a hold today. So I'll take that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for context, we are recording on Tuesday, a very late recording here. I wanted to record last night after the hockey watch party, but it became very late, so we are recording now on Tuesday. You're probably listening to this on Wednesday or Thursday. Um, but yes, let's get into the slightly more interesting trades here. Um, and you traded away Christopher Sanchez. I uh, forgot you did that. Yeah, Christopher Sanchez, Jason Churio to Alex for Lars Nootbaar and Marco Raya, who you have since cut, I believe.
I have. I'm a huge Lars Nootbaar guy, and so I'll say first, the timing of this trade was really interesting. So, Alex and I kind of been discussing Nootbaar trades for a while, and Alex was telling me, well, part of the reason that like I'm concerned about Christopher Sanchez is, and I looked up and I was like, actually, Lars Nootbaar just got hurt. He had left the game. He was day to day with an oblique issue, and I was like, he's probably going to land on the IL. And Alex is like, well, I can't like trade you an injured player. He's like, it's kind of cheap. And I'm like, well, like I know he's hurt and I'm kind of accepting the risk here. Um, and indeed I did. Lars Nootbaar, he started off the season a bit slow. He had a 145 WRC plus in May, and all the expected numbers say that his overall line, which is a 116 WRC plus on, should be a lot better. And if you look on his StatCast page, I mean, it is blood red. He has been dominating this year when healthy. Um, and I was reading an article from last year, and I was basically like, well, he always has the plate discipline. In the second half of last year, he was really started to put together the power and kind of striking the ball with more authority. And then it really came down to mixing and matching those skill sets in a way where he could be the most productive version of himself. So he's not so passive that he's like missing obvious pitches to drive, but also not just trying to swing aggressively at everything and forgetting how to walk. And I think he was really starting to do that this year. The walk rate was still elite at 13.4%. The hard hit rate jumped 15%. I just, um, I'm willing to wait on him to get healthy. It looked like he was going to miss about a month for now. And I thought I was kind of getting to a part of my schedule where I could afford to kind of wait him out a little bit. And I feel pretty good about it. Getting him, I think he's a really good addition to my team. In an outfield that really needed it. I have Tatis and Suzuki and Yelich that I really like, but beyond that, like Betts is obviously elite, but like I've been playing him at shortstop recently because Turner's out and he's probably not going to be outfield eligible next year. Mullins has been awful. Kowser struggled a bit after a hot April. Um, so I needed the outfield help. On the flip side, didn't really need the starting pitching help. I had 12 starting pitchers, and with or once everyone got healthy, Cole and Gavin Williams are on their way back. Zach Gallen, I don't think is going to be out for too long. So I like Christopher Sanchez a lot. I think he's starting to piece it together a little more. Early on in the season, he was a little too inconsistent for me. I do think there's a little bit of regression coming. Like he hasn't given up a home run this year, and I get that he's a ground ball heavy pitcher. But like I think there's a little bit of a negative regression coming there, and I don't think he has the same upside as Nootbaar. I know some people in here really like Jason Churio. I think he's a fine prospect, but like he's still a 19-year-old in single A, and Raya was just a throw-in. So, but I think this makes sense for Alex, right? He's acquired quite a few bats recently, and we had talked about at the beginning of the year how he had one of the best young rotations, and he's kind of traded them all away. So nice for him to acquire some depth.
Yeah, no, certainly. Not a lot more to add. You kind of covered it all. There was just kind of a lot of hubbub around Christopher Sanchez this off season, and to see you move off of him so quickly, I don't know why I'm ever surprised, but about that. But yeah, he is on to Alex's team. He's a solid get for Alex.
Yeah, it's for me not an indictment on Sanchez's skills. I really like him. I just, needed to allocate resources elsewhere. So I thought this was a good trade for Alex.
Yes, let's move on here then. The next trade, Casey Mize for a third. Any thoughts?
I think it's a decent gamble for Conor. Like, I don't think Casey Mize is going to be much of anything, but he's still a young starter that I think can, will eat up some innings for the Tigers if he can even just like be like a 4 ERA guy. I think he has room in the back of a rotation. But EBO didn't have the space. I think maybe you could have gotten a little more, but I think it's fine.
Yeah, EBO, another third round pick for them. They've got just another one for their collection. Kind of surprising to see them move off Casey Mize, but it definitely makes sense to. Ben Brown for a second. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Andrew talked to me a little bit about this trade after he made it. He really likes Ben Brown's arm and thinks he has a lot of potential if the Cubs stick with him in a rotation. He actually just landed on the IL today. I don't know with what I haven't seen, but I don't think it's a terrible gamble. Especially if he thinks that pick's going to be late in the round. As for Erik, I mean, Erik has like a gazillion starting pitchers as is, so uh, why not get rid of one more guy who you don't have room for him? Get a pick out of it. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I like Ben Brown a lot. Um, he may go to waivers in Gallardo if Sully never responds. I think he's a good get, high upside guy. I like that trade a lot for Andrew. Um,
Absolutely. EBO traded a 2026 third for Spencer Torkelson. Any
yeah,
thoughts?
they got Torque back. I was a little bit surprised when they gave him up, but Torque is now uh, back on this team for the second or maybe even third time. Um,
Makes sense.
he's is he what on their NPI now? Is that he's not?
Yeah, because so what happened was I think Anthony had another player get demoted, and rather than deal with two NPIs, he decided just to trade Torque to back to EBO. Um,
Yeah, Anthony's got Parker Meadows in his NPI now. Um,
or you know what? He traded for Torque when he was still on the major league roster, and then he got demoted, and that was kind of the impetus to demote him.
yeah,
That's
10 out of 12 teams currently are using their NPI spot. And a lot of them are using them on someone who's like actually interesting instead of like uh, uh like a guy that they're taking a flyer on. So these spots are definitely being used for their intended purpose, which is nice.
I'm glad we actually had the list.
Yeah, no, Jordan Walker, yeah, Reed Detmers, Brett Beatty's definitely good that we have this. Uh, all right, so those are the, I guess, category of late pick for a guy trades. Which trade are we? The rest of the trades are kind of a little bit more interesting. Do we want to do? You you traded away a yellow square. Nick Castellanos is gone for Reese Hoskins, and we'll talk about the follow-up trade.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I will say because we didn't really talk about Torkelson specifically, but I will say I think it's a fine gamble for EBO if he comes back up and they decide to place him on the roster. I don't think he's somebody I'm ready to give up on in a dynasty format, but like there's a lot he needs to figure out still. But
Mhm.
yeah, let's jump to these trades. I would love to talk about the Castellanos Reese Hoskins deal. So, um, I've made it no secret that I want to trade Nick Castellanos. He bounced back a bit last year after a rough 2022. Um, but it wasn't back to like his Reds levels. And if you look at the like the counting stats were all great, but the OBP was kind of low. And if you look at the Statcast page, he wasn't really driving the ball as hard as he was. I kind of thought, hey, he bounced back a bit last year. Like maybe he gets on track more. Maybe it's just the first year of a big contract. He struggled in Philly. He was pretty abysmal to start this season. He's actually heating up again, but I was like, look, he's 32. He's gonna turn, I have some older bats. Like he's a guy I kind of view as expendable. I was like, let me just rip off the band-aid and trade him. And I've mentioned in the chat, there's been so many times I've almost traded him before, and this time I finally did. And even then, I had sent this to Conor, and then at the last second tried to swap Castellanos out for another outfielder, and he's like, "I want Castellanos." So I was like, "Fine." But I thought Rhys Hoskins, he's always been a guy I've liked, and I've tried to get him in this league forever, which is kind of ironic that I then subsequently traded him away. But great OBP, hits for power. Um, I've traded away Arenado, who we jumped over here. We should go back to that trade in a second as well. But um, I've traded away Muncy, right? I've traded away some pop. So I was like, hey, like maybe he's not a perfect positional fit. I already have Freeman and Alonso. I really need an outfielder, but like I think he's a better asset, and a more consistent asset than Castellanos. And Bubba Chandler, like I think he's a solid arm, but he's been struggling this year. I don't really like dealing with pitching prospects, so he was pretty easy to move off of. So I thought it was kind of a cheap way to get an upgrade. The other reason I liked Rhys Hoskins, though, was for what actually played out. I have been talking to Alex about Josh Naylor for quite some time. Josh Naylor is somebody I absolutely love. I think part of the reason Alex was hesitant to move him to me was because I couldn't give him an adequate replacement. And in the back of my head, I was like, well, Hoskins might be that adequate replacement. I know he's a little older, he's 31. But I wonder if Alex might like him. So I offered Alex the trade. Rhys Hoskins, Aiden Miller, CJ Kafis, Quinn Matthews, and Erik's 2026 second for Josh Naylor was what the trade ended up being. I love this trade. So I'll break it down here. Josh Naylor is, I think, an underrated superstar. And I don't think he's getting enough credit for what he's doing. So he played his 62nd game of the season today. He played 121 games last year. So this is basically half the games as last year. He's already matched his home run total. He has 17 now. He had 3 RBIs today, so he's up to 50. He had 97 last year. This is 50 in 61 games. So like he's on pace for like a 40, 110, 115-ish type season in the homers and RBIs. He's not a zero in the steals department. He already has 3. He had 10 last year, which you wouldn't expect for a big guy. His walk rate has improved from prior seasons. It's at 9.7% now. That's a career high. You might look at the slash line and be like, oh, he's hitting 220 with a 305 OBP. Like that kind of sucks. He has a 200 OBP, or sorry, 200 BABIP. To put that in perspective, that is the lowest BABIP of any qualified hitter. It is 126 points lower than his BABIP last season, and like 70 points lower than anything he has ever done before that. And if you look at his StatCast page, just everything has very much improved. StatCast page is blood red, all over the place. His X slug is in the top 10th percentile of the league. His hard hit percentage is a career high. His exit velocity is a career high by a couple miles. Barrel percentage is a career high. His expected batting average is 55 points higher than he's hitting right now. So if that luck just shifts back to the way it should be, to get some positive regression here, like even if he just hits at his X batting average, I mean, 270, you add the OBP he has right now, right? That's like a 350-ish OBP with like 40-ish homers and north of 100 RBIs. Which, by the way, his homer and RBI numbers are first among first basemen. He's basically Bryce Harper's right behind him in both categories. He's basically having a season Bryce Harper is having with bad BABIP luck, and probably even with correct BABIP luck, like slightly lower OBP. But like, I will certainly take that all day. And he's only 26. Like, I think he is here for the long haul. I absolutely love the acquisition of him. And my hot take, which you are absolutely going to hate, but I've seen some people saying this, I think he might be a better dynasty first base asset than Vlad Jr.
And that's kind of a little bit crazy, but you know, it's an interesting deal. I guess for the first trade, yeah, you did made a good trade to get Hoskins. I do like Bubba Chandler. I think he's interesting. I think he's young. I'm a little worried about the walk rate, but I think he's pretty solid and could be a good get for Conor, but it's the type of trade where you it's not hard for you to pull the trigger. Um and yeah, as for the second trade, I'm not the most convinced that Josh Naylor is going to be that much of an upgrade over Reese Hoskins, at least over the next couple years. Because let's be real, it's not like you're going to have Josh Naylor for more than uh it's not going to have like it's not like you're going to have Josh Naylor once Reese Hoskins' prime is over anyway. Um,
I don't know
but
about that.
I
I,
don't know.
I would disagree with that statement, unless I trade up from Josh Naylor, but go ahead.
But yeah, and I don't think they're going to be that different over the next couple of years. And then, I like Aiden Miller a lot. I know he kind of became a joke in the Slack chat, but I think Aiden Miller is a really good prospect. CJ Kafus and Quinn Matthews in the second, I don't really care much about. Maybe Quinn Matthews will be an interesting guy in the next year or so. I don't really know anything about either of them, but it feels like you kind of, at least especially with Miller, gave up a decent amount for that upgrade.
No, I think I gave up a decent amount, but I do think it's for a player that's worth it. And I will say, like, I do like Hoskins a lot, right? If Alex didn't want to make this trade and I just kept Hoskins, I would have been perfectly content. But I don't think he's the counting stats are not nearly as high as Naylor's have been this year. There's a little bit of regression in how hard he's been hitting the ball, which I think can partially be attributed to the year layoff that he had. But also when I'm thinking about it too, you know, I'm looking at some of these bats that I've traded, and Arenado is a good example. We can transition into him for in a minute here. Look at the price that Arenado commanded last year at the age of 32, and then look at what he got this year at the age of 33. I think some of these players in our league start to fall off in perceived value kind of quickly. And not that I wouldn't be content holding on to Hoskins for a couple of years, but if I could strike while the iron is hot and get someone who's just entering his prime, who I think is getting better and better, then I'm all for it. And if the cost to make that upgrade for me is a 19-year-old in A ball, as much as I love this 19-year-old in A ball, like I think Aiden Miller is the real deal. I haven't heard anybody say anything negative about him. Then so be it. And I think that is, unless you have anything else here, I think that's a good transition into the Arenado deal.
Yeah, let's talk about Arenado.
Okay. I traded Arenado to Ruthvik for Alfredo and Eric's 2026 second, both of which have already been traded away. For me, I traded or I traded for Joey Ortiz. Jordan Westburg's come up. Westburg looks like a legitimate full-blown all-star. He should be in the all-star team this year. And Joey Ortiz, I mean, we talked about him the last episode. He has been fantastic this year. I think leads NL rookies and WRC plus. And I think that's kind of my third base tandem for the foreseeable future. And kind of like how I was benching Muncy to get Westburg in the lineup, I was benching Arenado to make sure both of those guys were in the lineup. I viewed him as expendable. The power metrics have been declining with Arenado the past couple years. Other than that one bonkers year that he had, I want to say it was 22. It's been low OBPs and decent power numbers, but with the metrics starting to decline, I wasn't really interested in holding on to him too much longer. And Ruthvik wanted to gamble on him. So, do you know I knew would attract some interest just based on where he was in some of the lists, and a second round pick's a second round pick. So
Yeah, I think fair enough. I'm not super into Arenado anymore. I think he's looking kind of washed. Um, and where is that deal? Yeah, Duno. Yeah, that second round pick was one of the picks you traded for um for Josh Naylor. And Duno is interesting. He's super young. He's hitting the ball decently well, though there's some BABIP concerns and there's some strikeout concerns. But he is walking a lot, which is definitely something you like to see. Um, he's the type of guy very excited about as a Reds fan. As a fantasy player, I'd want to wait and see a little longer.
I think that's very fair. Yeah, I think the hype side he's still going to go, but like I feel like you could also describe a lot of guys like that. The last thing I'll say here is that I entered the season with seven guys who were 32 or older on the roster and four who were 27 or younger. I basically flipped that now. I got eight guys, this is just bats. I now have eight bats who are 27 or younger and only four who are 32 or older. So watch out. I'm trying to build a full-blown dynasty here and not just making the insane win now push while completely mortgaging my future.
We'll see. Well, you've been at least paying more attention to the prospects that you add, even if you're not, keeping them for a while. You have been kind of paying attention and following them, so that's a big step in that direction.
It's helped out. Hey, I've Westberg and Kalser came through my farm system, and look at what they're doing now.
Yeah. But yes, let's talk about Alfredo Duno. You traded uh this was a deal that I don't know how gets negotiated. You traded Travis Sykora, Alfredo Duno to Alex for Enrique Bradfield, Justin Robleski, and a second. Like how do you decide that there's no major leaguers in this deal? How do you decide that this is a thing that you two need?
Okay, here's what happened. Alex has asked me about Travis Sykora in the past, and yesterday, like out of the blue, like around midnight, he texts me and he's like, "Do you have any interest in Justin Brodelsky?" And I was like, "Well, let me take a quick look." And I was like, "Well, I know you like Travis Sykora. Maybe we could get him involved somehow." And he's like, "Well, would you do it one for one?" And I was like, "No." Because I think Sykora is a little more upside, but I've asked him about Bradfield in the past, and I know he was kind of looking to get rid of him. So I was like, why don't we do just a two for one? And then he was like, well, what would it take to also get Alfredo Duno into trade? And I was like, well, what about a second round pick? Um, and he was like, well, I can't do my 2025, but I could do my 2026. And I was like, sure. By far the quickest I've ever negotiated a trade with Alex. But it just kind of came together quickly, and I will take it. I think he got the two higher upside prospects. I think the guys I got probably have a higher likelihood of making it to the majors just based on the level that they're at and their skill set, but I don't think they have as much upside to be high impact contributors. But I always enjoy getting an Orioles first round pick. They do a good job of developing players, and really getting that second round pick was kind of the prize of the deal for me. That's what I really wanted.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think Sykora is interesting. Um, he's pitching decently well in single A, but he's only pitched 20 innings in affiliated ball, so I'm not really going to care too much about him. We've talked about Duno. Bradfield is, I liked him at the draft. I had kind of a high third round grade on him. He hasn't been amazing this year, in high A, uh, but he's 22, so it's not like he's doing not amazingly at the age of 19. So I don't really care too much about Bradfield. Robleski, uh, I don't know. I think Alex maybe got the better of this deal, to be honest, but I don't really care too much either way, and it's just kind of interesting that it happened.
Yeah, that's fine. If he got the better of the prospects, I don't like really care. These are just guys that keep cycling through. Like I said, the pick was really what I was kind of looking out for. Um, that
Yeah,
was the more
fair
concern.
enough. Wroblewski's pitching pretty well in Double A, actually.
He is, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think it's fine, but I think he got way more attention in the chat yesterday than it should have.
Yeah, I think yeah, Wroblewski for Sykora is pretty much even. And I'd say Duno is better than Bradfield, and then the second is a second.
Yeah, it makes up for whatever that little difference is. But yeah, thankfully that's all my trades. So I'm sure I will be quicker through the rest here. There are two more trades for us to talk about. I think.
Yes, let's talk about the first of the two remaining deals. EBO, finally starting to consolidate their picks, and they got Emmanuel Clase and Ryan Pepio for two firsts, um, possibly late first, although Jake's could be a lottery pick. A second and Jordan Beck.
Yeah, this is interesting. I think a lot of it, and this is gonna sound weird, but I think a lot of it depends on how you view Ryan Pepiot. Um, Clase is the undisputed best closer in baseball right now, I would think. And the only reason I wouldn't say Mason Miller is because he's on a losing team. Uh, whereas Cleveland's winning, so racking up the saves and all the stats are amazing. But giving up two firsts for a closer is still a lot. Now, when you throw in a young starting pitcher, it makes it a lot more interesting. I know the Rays kind of have a complicated history with fantasy relevant pitchers. I do think Pepio is starting to unlock some stuff and look really good. And if you think he's going to continue on that progression, then I think EBO wins this trade for sure. If you don't think Pepio is continuing on this progression, I still think it's more than a fine trade for an EBO team that I think is legitimate, has really shown that they're breaking out and has all these extra picks and all these extra prospects and all these extra assets to trade. They identified a place that they wanted to upgrade, and they got the best player available at that position, who's also really young. Like, I have no problems with that, even if Pepio kind of doesn't really turn into anything, because I think this is one of those types of deals that winning teams make that can really help take them to the next level, especially when they have these extra assets to do so. I think from Alex's perspective, right, if you're not a win now team, there's no reason that you need to have a top closer. And I do think getting two first is great. I do think getting Jordan Beck was great. I wonder if he could have done this deal without Pepio, and I think if he would have been able to do the deal without Pepio, it would have been a home run for me. I still think this can pan out even with Pepio in the deal, but I think he could have gotten a little more value for Pepio if he traded him separately. And I do know for a fact that he has garnered other interests around the league. In fact, as soon as the trade was made, another team offered EBO a first round pick for Pepio. So I thought that was interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I agree. Maybe if you're Alex, you don't want to be trading Pepio. But I get trading Class A, even though, at a certain point, Class A is so young, maybe he's a guy you want to keep, even if he is a closer. Yeah, the two first round picks, definitely a lot for a closer, but yeah, I agree when you're, EBO and you've got a million picks, and you're trying to win now, this is the type of move that this is what you're going to be spending those picks on.
Absolutely. No, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Um, but yeah, last trade, one final trade. And we've been talking about trades for a long time.
I love it.
Um, Michael Busch for Tommy Troy. Jake no longer has any of his 2024 first rounder or any of his 2024 draft picks.
Yeah, after we announced him as the winner of the draft. So it just goes to show how crazy things are in this league and how quickly things can change. Uh, that being said, I mean, Troy's really struggled. Um, I know Jake was trying to trade him away earlier in the season. I feel like he kind of saw this coming and he hasn't been particularly good, but he was still someone I liked on draft day. And I think in our mock, I had him as like the last pick in the first round. Um, Busch was a popular sleeper pick, but just kind of started to lose playing time. I mean, I think he's fine, but like, I think this is kind of a two names that are bigger than how they're actually performing. So it looks like a bigger trade than it actually is, but in reality, it's kind of like a little bit of like fine, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'd rather have the Tommy Troy side of this deal. Yeah, he has had a rough it's really only been 12 games this year, so I'm not super worried. And he's been hurt. He's had some hamstring trouble. Um, I think I'd rather have the Tommy Troy side just because, like you said, Bush is struggling. And it's just kind of having to find a roster spot for him through this. I think, yeah, and he's striking out a lot lately too. Um, I think if Bush kind of plays like he was, or really plays to his season average or closer to how he's playing early in the season, then the Bush side wins. But if what we've seen the last month or so is more what we expect in the future, then I'd rather have Tommy Troy.
Yeah, I will say that from Jake's perspective, right? Like he has all this roster space because everybody's getting hurt. He's trying to rebuild depth a little bit. I don't necessarily have a problem with the logic of this, even though I don't necessarily love the player.
Yeah, I agree. And if Jake's kind of thinking he may want to take this year off and play for next year, then Bush is a good guy to go for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he just lost yet another player today. Um, it's amazing. The preseason, he had like no injuries. Well, it looked like he was going to be all healthy this year and there wasn't going to be any issues. And I swear every one of his players has just dropped like flies. I mean, it's truly insane. I mean, we've always seen this before. Like teams have had like just large amounts of injuries, but man, this is something.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, that was 13 trades. Not quite our 20 trades episode, but that was 13 interesting ones.
it was, I don't know if it was 13 interesting ones, but it was 13 trades.
Every trade is an interesting trade to me. So we had, let's see, let me count this quickly. We had 11 trades all season to discuss before this podcast, and we just had 13 over the last 2 weeks. So I think trade season's picking back up again. And it's kind of been a variety of people too. It hasn't just been the same couple of teams. I mean, I know I've featured in quite a few of them, but you're seeing some other teams get in on the action. So um, hopefully this is the start of the market picking back up because you know me, I love a good trade.
Yeah, we shall see. But we do have some matchups to talk about. We are officially halfway through the season. Um, and there's a lot of interesting things that happened. We had two ties, um, and big upset, an exciting rivalry week uh, was had by all. Ready to dive in?
Yes, I am living on a prayer and ready to discuss.
All right. I think we got to talk about the upset here. Yuki plays to the level of his opponents, and he played better than EBO this past week. He really just like had a legitimately good week and got an 8-4 win.
Yeah, like so he and the pace slowed down a little bit towards the end of the week, but like the start of the week for his offense is like about as good of an offensive week as you'll see. Whereas EVO just cannot get any momentum going at the beginning of the week. And by the time they started to pick up a little bit of offensive steam by the end of the week, Yuki was just so far ahead in the majority of the offensive categories that it just didn't really matter. And then on the pitching side, like the EVO got the six quality starts. That was nice, but their bullpen didn't really get that much traction. And they had some pitchers that really struggled. And, 4.52 ERA, 130 whip for them. Yuki didn't have a huge quantity week. He only used seven starts, but the guys pitched good. So good win for Yuki. Like, I mean, this is I I know there's like 8 teams that are really in it, so he's kind of hanging around the periphery here. But if he can, just kind of stick around, maybe he sneaks in a playoff spot. I'm not sure. At least kind of stays competitive for a while. But yeah, I mean, good for him. Happy to see him rack up a huge win over an EVO team. I like seemed unstoppable there for like a month stretch, and then has now lost back-to-back games. So certainly interesting. But
Yeah,
all
they have. And Yuki, if he can beat me this week, could definitely have an outside shot at that fifth or sixth spot. He had a good week from a lot of guys. Alex Bregman has struggled this year, but was good this week. Lourdes Gurriel Jr., fantastic with the bat. Mason Wynn was pretty solid. Corbin Carroll finally put together a decent week, scored 6 runs. Matchup MVP will be Yainer Diaz, who didn't have the great on base percentage, but 4 homers and 10 RBI. Uh, definitely, definitely really powered him to victory. On the pitching side, yeah, not a ton of quantity, although got a great start from Hunter Brown, who really has not had many of those or really has actually made 4 really solid starts in a row. So maybe there's uh, some turnaround here coming for him after a rough start to the season. And also a good start for Jake Irvin, who, um, has been surprisingly solid for the Nationals and has been on Yuki's team for most of the season now. As for EBO, uh, not a terrible week, but certainly not a great week. They hit a lot of doubles, but the OBP was not so good. Tough performances for Luis Medina. Ryan Weathers did not follow up his matchup MVP with a good performance. Mackenzie Gore had um, one decent start and one rough one. Yeah, it's not the best week for them, but really solid week for Yuki, and he's in the win column again.
yeah, not to mention too, Kyle Tucker landed on the IL, so that really does not help EVO.
It does not.
Yeah. But yeah, well said. And yeah, I got nothing else to say in this matchup if you want to move on.
Cool. Yeah, any matchup that you want to talk about next?
Oh, let me go back and check. Do. Um, let's talk about let's talk about Jake and Anthony here. Um, I want to give a big shout out to Anthony's team. So his team just did not play well this week. 13 homers, 47 ribbies is great, right? And 74 strikeouts is solid. But you look across the board, and it was a pretty bad week. I mean, 5.76 ERA, 144 whip. But he figured out a way to pull out a tie. And that really impressed me because you would love to have your team play elite every single week, but sometimes you just kind of have to find a way to win when things aren't going right, especially against some of these better teams. And while it wasn't a win, I thought this was one of his more impressive managing performances of the year. Um, so I just wanted to kind of give him a shout out there. It was a 6-6 tie. Jake dominated in saves. That 4 quality starts out of 12, so not a great ratio, but enough to win quality starts. 4.33 ERA, 116 whip was fine. Not really a great offensive week for him, but he was able to win enough categories a tie. I'll also give a shout out to him too. I mean, it's been rough sledding for him this year, and I know he's played. This stat's wild to me. He's played 7 teams in his top 8, and he's only outright won one matchup, and I believe that was against you early in the year. But
Yeah.
he's tied 3 of those matchups, so So he's 1-3-3. So I mean, he's still keeping it competitive against these tough teams, even with a diminished roster. So I didn't want him to get lost here, kind of in the praise, but I was really impressed by Anthony this week. So yeah.
Yeah, no, Jake has been keeping competitive, although I wouldn't say his team played particularly well this week at all. Some of the pitching quantity stats were there. He saved seven, and the whip was decent, but the hitting was just pretty atrocious this week with 28 RBI, eight homers. And Anthony just kind of did barely enough. Had some, yeah, not really anything to feel good about on the pitching side, except for maybe out of the bullpen, David Bednar did well, and John Schreiber had a couple holds. Hitting side, there was more to like. Decent week for Christopher Morel, three homers, eight RBI for Ryan Mountcastle. Decent week for Josh H. Smith. Starling Marte played well. Matchup MVP though, Jesse Winker, 654 on base, scored five runs, and even stole a base, which was the tie-breaking stolen base. Um, I guess it happened on Tuesday, but still, a Jesse Winker stolen base was the difference in this matchup.
Oh God. And Ryan Presley almost handed Jake the win, but he was handed a 2-run lead in the eighth and he blew it. So man, I mean, talk about some thin margins here. You know, if the Winker stolen base doesn't happen, Jake wins. If Presley gets a hold, Jake wins. Like this was a close one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A lot of thin margins. Yeah, Jake definitely had to be feeling good about his chances before Presley came in, which is just, yeah, just a tough way to not get a win.
Yeah, I mean Presley has not pitched particularly well this year. So yeah,
Mm,
that's how it goes sometimes though.
it is. Um, but yes, anything else on this matchup? Anthony retained sole possession of first place at 7-2-2.
I will say, if you would have told me before the season that these two teams played in week 11 and they tied, um, for meaning that one of them retained their lead in first place and the other team was seventh in the standings, I would have been like, oh, hey, this is like a nice kind of season for Anthony to stay competitive, and Jake is predictably leading the league. Uh, it is very much the opposite. And that is crazy to me. It is crazy to me how Anthony has had so many of these matchups where it's like, hey, like it's him in first place against the challenger, and he just has to beat the challenger to or the challenger just needs to beat him to take first place, and Anthony seems to have this clutch gene and it keeps winning. I don't know. It's awesome though, and I love to see it.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely very interested to see how this yeah, how this team continues. Let's see who has the belt. I know he let's take a quick check on the belt. I know he had it. He took it in week 7 from you, defended it week 8. Let's just run down his schedule.
A loss or a tie in between there, other than
Week
this one,
9, he lost it to Ruthvik week 9.
which means I'm
Um,
back because I just beat Ruthvik. Unless Ruthvik lost it in week 10.
yep, you've got it back. You
A
took it. Yeah.
dynasty belt.
All right. Um, so yeah, so that is the Dynasty belt. Here, let's quickly, uh, while we're here, track down the loser's belt. Um, uh, Ruthvik still has not changed his name, by the way. He does not own Devers anymore.
Not only that, I learned this week that Daniel and Matt's team abbreviation is still Cody for Cody Bellinger, even though he is a Cub, and he has not owned Cody Bellinger in over a year. And I think I might have to say something to him about that.
Yeah, I mean they haven't owned Brandon Drury in a while either. But yes, loser's belt. Andrew had the loser's belt. He would have given it to me, and I would have given it to EBO, and I guess EBO retained it against Yuki.
There you go.
There you have it. But yeah, speaking of me, I think we got to talk about me versus Erik.
Yeah,
Um,
that's where I was going to propose we go next.
yeah,
What a
another incredibly tight matchup. We always played these tight matchups here, and we always split our season series, and Erik got the first one.
yeah, great week for Erik, certainly as I pull it back up. Uh, I mean, just dominant week offensively, 19 homers, 51 RBIs, 47 runs, 18 doubles. And on the pitching side, he had a very Erik week. Seven quality starts, but no saves. He did do a little bit of Holt streaming this week, which I thought was interesting, but he still lost there. He only got one. 220 ERA, 0.92 whip, are just fantastic ratios. I mean, Erik, he's quietly playing very well. I think he was first in Naruto after Sunday's games in four of the six offensive categories, and I think it was like two of the pitching categories. Uh, he's just quietly dominating in his own style of ball, and it is so fascinating to watch. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, he's got Helio Ramos now, and he had a fantastic week. He homered three times, walked six times, have 571 on base. Just a
he
tremendous week.
he is
Jose Ramirez, obviously great. Ellie had a solid week, homered twice, stole a couple bases. Matchup MVP, Teoscar Hernandez just absolutely murdered me all week. Four homers, six category contributor, four homers, six runs, three doubles, 10 ribbies, 429 on base, and he stole a base as well, which was enough to tie that category. Um, yeah, Teoscar Hernandez really just absolutely killed it for Erik this week. Pitching side, very good start for Chris Sale. George Kirby made one terrific start and one good start where he ran a high pitch count and got pulled early. Luke Weaver, he tried to stream for holds, did not get a hold, but lowered his ERA and whip. And now I am trying to stream Luke Weaver for holds myself. Um, good start for Jack Flaherty, good start for Luis Heel. Yeah, Erik just really all around deserved win for him. And now he's in second place.
Yeah, he is quietly rising back up here. It looks very good. Yeah. Also Helio Ramos to me is now forever and always the Shark King. So that is what I will be referring to him as.
Well, I don't know what you mean by that, but I'm not going to
So
ask further questions.
there is no, it's pretty innocuous. There's a Fangraphs post where they meant to say Helio Ramos has started in like 24 consecutive games, but instead of started, they wrote sharded instead. And they kept it up and they've like actually been kind of running with it as a joke. They've like mentioned him sharding in a couple other articles. And it cracked me up. So I'm I'm gonna keep rolling with it. It makes
Well,
me like Leo Ramos a bit more.
well, there you have it. As for me, I had a good, not great week, and I would have needed a great week to beat Erik. I like the way I pitched for the most part. Uh, you know, Tanner Houck, another quality start. He has now made quality starts in one. He has made quality starts one, two, three, four in a row. Got paddocked, then made five in a row before that. Um, so he's just yeah, 9 out of 10 quality starts and 11 out of 13 over the course of the season. Love me some Tanner Houck. Um, Great start from Mitch Keller. Um, One great start from Adam Mazur to start my week, but then got just absolutely blown to pieces in his second start against Arizona, which, could have cost me a little bit. Um, I got Andrew Heaney Paddock. Great start from Zach Wheeler as always. Great start from Framber Valdez as always. Two holds for Jeff Hoffman, which were enough to win that category. Um, got six saves from uh, three different closers getting two saves each. Um, so I played well there. Hitting wise, Aaron Judge drove in 12 runs and had a 630 on base percentage. Um, if I had won this week, he would have been matchup MVP for like the fourth time in a row. And a good week for Vlad and a good week for Lindor and a good week for India. Other than that, kind of average. Good week for Tyler Stevenson too. Um, I would say, yeah, good week for me. Great week for Erik, and he's got the win.
I want to move over to let's talk about Andrew and Alex. Because I want to talk about this stolen base record. Um, Erik had set the high earlier this year with 18. Um, Andrew's previous high before this week himself was 12. And then Andrew was basically like, hold my beer, I'm going to shatter this. And he got 21. Uh, and like it looked like, oh, he was gonna tie it, like great, this is cool. And then all of a sudden you look up and it's just like, oh, like by the way, I got three more. So 21 is by far the record. 18 is now second. And even before 18, I think third place is only 16. So I mean, truly just one of the best stolen base weeks that like you will see ever. And I don't know if we're gonna see 21 duplicated anytime soon, but
Yeah, so for context, I have never had more than 10 steals in a single week. Andrew had 11 different players steal a base this week.
And Conor going into Sunday had 19 steals all week or all season. So Andrew had more steals last week than Conor's had all season.
That's insane. I mean, yeah, five steals from Renhefo, two from TJ Friedel, two from Bobby Witt Jr., two from Jamer Candelario, three for Ian Happ, and then a bunch of other guys had one. Yeah, tough to pick a matchup MVP here, although I think I'm going to pick TJ Friedel. Drove in 7 runs, scored 6 runs, had a double, couple homers, two of those steals, like I mentioned, and a 429 on base percentage. Just a great week for him. Um, he's doing well. And on the pitching side, Andrew had one quality start and one paddock from Grayson Rodriguez. Uh, Great start from Lodolo. Uh, uh, Good start from Tanner Bybee and Chris Bassett and Justin Steele. Um, just good all around week in a matchup against Alex that was decently tight.
Yeah, I think the final score makes it look a bit closer than it actually really was. But like, yeah, and kudos to Alex for kind of clawing back a bit. But yeah, I mean, Andrew desperately needed this win after some heartbreaks recently. So good for him for kind of being able to put that together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, Alex drops to 3-7-1. Had an okay week, I would say. Uh, Hassan Kim had a couple homers. Not really a big on base week for him. Tyler Freeman, though, played pretty well. And then pitching wise, Matt Waldron, look at him. He's made three quality starts in a row. Um, the knuckleball is back.
Knuckleball's back, baby.
All right. But moving on here.
Can we talk Connor and Daniel and Matt now?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been wanting to talk about this one all day. This is, you get the two worst teams in the league here. They had one combined win going into this week, and coming out of this week, they still have one combined win.
But it's like, and not only that, if you go and if you were just following that matchup on Sunday, which admittedly I kind of did towards the end there, it was like going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like it'd be 6-4-2 for one team, and then 4-5-3, and then like 7-4. Like the scores were going all over the place. It wasn't just like, oh, like one category or two categories they flipped. There was like five or six that just like kind of kept flipping there at the end. It was wild. And ultimately they pulled out a tie. One of those where it's kind of inconsequential in the big picture of how the season's going to go, but exciting as hell to watch. Neither team played particularly well, but hey, it was a tie. It was certainly fun to watch.
Yeah, it's like watching UMass versus UConn in football. It's just, you know, um, they're gonna find their way. Um, both teams really did not hit very well at all. The Drury had the on base percentage um, lead. Conor hit more home runs, and they were very close in a lot of these categories. 27 RBI to 26. That was a close category. 34 runs to 32 in Conor's favor. Um, not a lot of notable performances from either side, although Jerks and Profar had a really solid week for the jury. For the jury, and for Connor's team, uh, decent week for Andrew Vaughn. Uh, Reese Hoskins in Connor's lineup hit a home run. Um, Decent week for Justin Turner. Cal Raleigh as well. On the pitching side, Connor probably outpitched him, I would say. Both teams got three quality starts. Connor got the five holds, which got him a big win in that category. As for Connor's pitching, good week for Jared Jones. Good week for out of the bullpen, Andrew Kittredge and Tyler Rogers. And as for Daniel and Matt, they're pitching. Decent week for Frankie Montas, who made one excellent start in Colorado and then got blown up and left after an inning and third in his second start. And then, yeah, Luis Severino made a good start there as well. I think I have a very tough choice for matchup MVP. I am going to give it to Profar, though, at the end. He had a couple homers. He had a 414 on base, stole a base, a couple doubles as well. Solid week for him and got them a tie as they moved to 0-9-2.
Yeah, man. No, Profar's been great this year. I didn't think he was going to keep it up at this pace, but he somehow has. So good for Profar.
Yeah, good for Profar. I mean, kind of having a bit of a renaissance in San Diego here. The BABIP is, very high, but also he's walking well. He's always walked well and never struck out a ton. Um, 421 on base percentage, and he's slugging 500 clip, the best of his career so far.
Yeah, there you go. I know he's been one of your boys for a while, so I'm sure you were very happy to see him
Yeah.
succeed.
All right, the last matchup here is yours. You had a very comfortable win over Ruthvik to improve to 6-4-1. Uh, just a half a game, still remain half a game behind him, but a very convincing win, and your offense looked solid.
Yeah, great offensive week. I know the pitching's been doing very well recently, but the hitting not as much. So, kind of great to see that flip. Um, Adley had a grand slam, runs he drove in total this week. Nice to see him really heating up. Yuki had an awesome week. Tatis is playing like one of the best hitters in baseball again. So just overall, the offense looked great. Pitching side, I tied my holds record with 10. And as you so affectionately call him, 45-year-old Daniel Hudson came close to getting me in 11th, but the Dodgers couldn't quite hold on to a win or to a lead in the Sunday night game. But Yeah, I was really happy with this performance overall. I kind of needed to come out dominating after that rough three game losing streak in the middle of the season. I kind of got back on track playing Daniel and Matt the week before, but nice to do it against like a real competitive team. And, hopefully I can kind of continue this momentum.
Yeah, no, certainly. You mentioned Adley. He drove in 11 runs this week. I would say he's your matchup MVP. A lot of high RBI totals from guys this week, I would say. But yeah, good weeks from the guys you mentioned. Altuve, Freeman, Tatis. Your pitching had a solid week. Great whip for you. Only got one save and lost Ks and quality starts to Ruthvik, but those are both very tight categories. You had a good week for Max Fried. And a very good start from Kyle Bradish. 6 innings, one hit. Ruthvik's team, played fine, not the best week. Um, they had the five quality starts in the 73 Ks. Thanks to a good Logan Webb start, a good Nick Pivetta start, very good Joey Estes start, who is no longer rostered. Um, Yeah, hitting wise, not really a lot to write home about, although a very good week for Anthony Santander. That drops Ruthvik into that three-way tie uh with me and EBO that I am at the top of. But yeah, that 4, 5, 6, very interesting grouping.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. Um,
Or no, 3, 4, 5, not 4, 5, 6.
yeah, three, four, five. Yeah, very, very interesting group there indeed. I'll be curious to see how that plays out. All three of those teams lost this week. Um,
Yeah,
Yeah, and it was I think of those top four teams in the standings last week, two, three, and four all lost and one tied. And I actually think last week's two, three, four is this week's three, four, five, and Erik leapfrogged all of you.
they did. He did. Yeah.
Yeah, so damn. He
Yeah.
would have tied Anthony up there too if Anthony would have lost, but Anthony pulling out that tie looks even more important now when you consider that the other teams all lost and that despite tying, he was still able to gain ground on two, three, and four.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Very big tie for him. And yeah, so that's this week. Are we ready to get into uh the week 12 preview?
Yeah. Matchups of the week. I think there's two. Jake v. Andrew. I, I don't want to go as far as to say it's a must win for both of them, but they're currently sitting at 7 and 8 right now. And the loser is certainly going to be at a disadvantage to kind of crawl back up the standings. So, yeah, I think it's a really important week.
Yeah, no, I would say I'd be willing to say this is matchup of the week. Yeah, just because both of these teams were in the semis last year, and both of these teams they're in those 7 and 8 spots, like you said. Very curious to see who comes out on top here.
Absolutely. With a shout out as well to the other top eight matchup this week. That's Erik or not Erik, EBO versus Anthony. That one should also be interesting. Could EBO end their kind of mini slide here, and can Anthony kind of pick up another big win and continue his improbable run here?
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, let's pick these. How did we do last week? We didn't record last week, but we did put the predictions in the chat here.
Uh,
How are we?
Yeah, let me see if I can find a chat quickly. I'm not gonna I'll add up the scores offline, but
Oh, yeah, they're not in here. Yeah.
yeah, but you just threw them out in the chat on Monday, but Slack's being weird, and when I scroll, it goes up to March for some reason. Now I'm on Sunday. We talked about Abraham Toro for a bit. Here's a Joey Ortiz tweet. Okay, here we go. We both picked me to beat Ruthvik. We were correct there. We both picked Andrew to beat Alex and Zach. We were correct there. I chose Jake to win. You chose Anthony to win. They tied. We both picked Erik to win. He won. I picked Daniel and Matt to win. You picked Conor to win. Or sorry, you picked Daniel and Matt to win. I picked Conor to win. They tied, and we both picked EBO to win. But Yuki won. So we went both won 3, 1, and 2.
That's
Uh,
fine. We picked four the same. The two that we differed both ended in ties.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's wild. Um, I guess it's how it goes sometimes. But yeah. Wow, I have not added these up in a hot sec. I'll figure out the numbers sometime later, but I think I am ahead of you in the standing still because we have 2 weeks with identical records after the last one that I have the season record for, and I was ahead of you in that. So that means that I pick first. Uh,
Yes.
okay. I will pick myself to beat Connor. I'm off to a little bit of a slow start, but I think it's going to turn around, I hope. I think Ruthvik's going to beat Daniel and Matt. I think he'll bounce back. I think Erik will beat Alex and Zach pretty convincingly. I know Yuki plays up to his competition, but there's no way he wins two in a row, right? So I'm gonna pick you to beat him. Uh, I'm gonna pick Andrew to beat Jake. I think Jake just lost Real Muto today. I think he's been playing particularly well. I I don't think Andrew's gonna be a pushover. And Anthony and EBO is kind of tricky. I'm gonna pick Anthony. I just he has some magic right now. It's just kind of working, and I kind of want to see how that plays out. But it's working, so let's see that. Let's see how that goes.
All right. Yeah, very interesting. Did you pick them all?
Yeah, I did.
All right. So as for me, I think you'll beat Sahil. I think Ruthvik will beat Daniel and Matt. I think that Andrew will beat Jake. I don't think Jake's team is playing very well, although he does kind of keep doing enough just to kind of stay in the picture. I think EBO will stop their slide and get a win over Anthony. And then I think Erik will beat Alex and Zach. And as for me versus Yuki, God, Yuki plays to the level of his opponents. I'm just gonna call it a tie.
Are you
I'm
serious?
I'm I'm off to a bad start this week. I think Yuki's gonna tie me.
Mm, man,
You
I
know,
think
it's a two-start week from Jordan Montgomery.
you
So
know you're allowed to bench him.
he's playing the Angels this week. I think did he get paddocked? Yeah, he got paddocked, which is better than his last two starts.
Yeah, but still, like it's Yuki.
I mean, Yuki did just beat EBO.
No, I know, but that felt more like the exception than the rule.
Well, we'll see who's right.
I mean I hope you're right. I hope Yuki I actually I hope you're wrong because I hope it goes even farther. I hope Yuki just wins, but uh yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, last uh one more thing here before we go. In the preseason prediction contest, I asked you all to name a player who will record a hit on 6-9. 5 out of 10 of us were correct. Andrew correctly picked O'Neill Cruz. Erik correctly picked Bryce Harper. I correctly picked Nolan Arenado. I don't know why I picked Nolan Arenado, but I was right. Greg correctly predicted Shohei Ohtani, and Anthony correctly picked Brian Reynolds. And the other five, Zane incorrectly picked Spencer Torkelson. who is not in the majors. Well, actually, let me see if he's in the minors. I'll give it to him if he got a hit uh, in the minors on 6-9. It looks like he let's Fangraphs changed their thing. He did. Spencer Torkelson got a hit in the minors on 6-9. Should I give it to EBO? I think I should.
You should give him like a half point or something.
I'm giving him a full point. I don't care. He got a hit on June 9th. So that was 6 out of 10. Ruthvik incorrectly picked Francisco Lindor. Jake incorrectly picked Tristan Casas. Daniel incorrectly predicted Jordan Alvarez, and you incorrectly picked Freddie Freeman. So that means, looking through the standings, you are in first with 17 points, followed by Erik with 15 and Jake with 11.
Damn.
Yeah, you got a lot of your points from, picking Dylan Cease would get traded and then trading for Dylan Cease. But, you've had some good picks otherwise here. But yeah, anything else here before we call it?
No, I think that's about it. It's been a fun couple of weeks in the league. Proud to see the trades picking back up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Great week here. Great week for trades. Gonna take a long time to edit this podcast. But yeah, we will see you next week. We might come back with power rankings next week. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, I think normally we do them halfway through the season, and I think if we didn't have 13 trades to talk about, we probably would have done them this week. But yeah, we can certainly do them next week.
Yeah, no, and Andrew and Jake, this matchup this week will have a lot of impact on the power rankings, I'd say.
Oh, absolutely. I think this Anthony and EVO one will too.
God, yeah, I don't know who I would put in first for power rankings right now, but we'll figure it out throughout the week and talk to you next week with our surely not controversial rankings.
Absolutely, yeah. Until next time.
All right, till next time.
This podcast is good.